Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Bork No Game video. Today's video is aka to a team/party guide, so let's go ahead and jump right into this and talk about my party before we go into anything else. So right here we have 5 units. Now you'll notice I have 1 monster and 4 humans. Let's go ahead and talk about this. So technically I have 2 DPS. Some of you are wondering, what's a DPS? How does that work? DPS is essentially based off of the character's abilities and then based off of their skills, right? So for example, Disgaea has a bunch of skills that are attack based and technically AoE. She is an AoE DPS. But then you look at someone like Etna, and then most of her DPS, it's like a mixed bag between like single target and also AoE. Now the thing is these characters have high attack base stats, and technically their defense and HP, they're not as high, right? And their abilities and skills learned, they revolve more around attacks. You can see here their spells are more attack based. But then you have something like Flan. Flan is a support character. You can skill her towards DPS, but most of her abilities lean towards like being a support, party XP, all allies increase damage, granting heals. And then if you look at her skills learned, most of her spells are heal based. And then that's where you're sort of like, oh, okay, this character wants to help others. And then you have the perfect support in some ways for physical teams. Prism Indigo, favorite character as far as like a free-to-play should raise, just because if you go into his skills learned, if you go into his spells right here, he has armor break and then mega armor break. Disgaea, pretty much any team that has a slow DPS, or he can slow himself down by wearing an axe, and he can essentially boost that person's DPS using, like the defense breaks. And not to mention, he also increases the attack of the person who is right behind them, right? He increases Disgaea's damage, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then you have someone like Noelle, who's technically, it's situational whether you want to say Noelle is better than Flan. Thing is Flan has better heals, once she learns her actual heals and stuff. But then you have like Noelle, who grants heals based off of her HP. But then if you look at her actual skills or spells right here, she doesn't have anything that's really, heal based. You can see she's like trying to attack with Giga Ice, and then, magic boosts and stuff. It's one of those things where it's like highly situational. But you can see now there are 2 DPS, and then you have like, technically 3 support on this team. In order to refine this team and make it better, 3 DPS and then 2 support, which would be Prism Indigo and then Noelle. Right, so let's go ahead and go into the spreadsheets. I'll leave links down below, and credits to the Dengenki website and to the folks at Discord for providing this information, right? So these are some support units right here. I already talked about like Prism Indigo, where he's a great defense breaker, great healer, Noelle. I didn't put Flan here because, using SP to heal, it's not the greatest. And then you have Monkman, pretty much he grants heals after the end of the turn or at the beginning of the turn. I don't think it applies to the entire party. He only heals himself. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there, but it doesn't say like for like the party where this one's like party HP. There's no other character like Noelle when I was like trying to search for stuff, except for like one monster, which is like the flower, but it's like 4% versus the 6% that Noelle has. And of course, if you haven't checked it out, check out Clint Wolf's New Year's Rosalind video. I think it was pretty spot on, where she is the best support in the game. She will boost everyone's position. She will make everyone action gauge much faster, allowing everyone to attack much faster, right? So she's going to be an essential unit. She also increases folks' damage. Just one of the best units in the game that's going to be added hopefully within the next week or month or so. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about monster attackers, or DPS, because there's definitely a bunch of them. And magic attackers or monster attackers are separated between physical and magical attacks. All right, so technically someone like Disgaea right here is a physical based attacker because most of her skills revolve around physical stuff. Then you have someone like Mid Boss. He's sort of out. He was like stealth released and no one really talked about him, but he's actually pretty good as a physical attacker. And then Laharl is here just because he can increase everyone's overall abilities. He helps every single team, but technically he would perform better on a human team just because Disgaea increases party monster types, and same thing with Mid Boss. Have the opposite effect with Rasbarrel, where pretty much she increases INT based characters who are party monsters, right? So she increases like intelligence, so everyone hits harder in that aspect. Technically Disgaea and Rasbarrel can go on the same team, but it would be better if you did like intelligence, intelligence, intelligence versus a mixed bag of like intelligence and attack base, right? So this is like things that you need to look for as you're moving towards the game. Think of it as like these monsters having different weapon types, sort of like humans. And of course you have Usalia, good at like attack based stuff. And then you have these characters as well. I call them, you know, like the fodder units, the units that technically can perform if you invest them. Fairy is interesting because she can actually increase magic based weapons once you get this many dupes of her. Fairy C and Fairy D only. It looks like Fairy A and Fairy B cannot do it. And then I put the dragon here, the twin-headed dragon, just because if you equip treasure equipment or like a certain piece of equipment, you get attack plus 12%, which is pretty good. If I were to recommend a team, definitely Nekosume, Wild Boar Tribe, and then Desco. Or you can technically pair Desco with Laharl if you want like a more top tier character, quote unquote. But a lot of the fodder units go with the monster teams, and I would say the monster teams, they're not good on single target. They're good for like farming. They're not as versatile as the humans, just because there's not a lot of like these rate up abilities that deal like high amounts of damage, because most of the attacks are based off ingrained skills. So let's cover this really quick. If you go into like Desco and then you look at the skills learned, these are the only attacks that she's going to get skill wise. She doesn't have the ability to get like weapon skills, and then her spells are locked to this stuff, and her intelligence stat, as you can see, is not that high. I didn't build her for intelligence, but it's 51,000 compared to the 89,000 attack. It's just something to look into if you're trying to raise a monster team. It will be kind of difficult. And then you have like the human attackers, right, which Laharl can go on every single team, hence why Laharl is rated so high. And not to mention he has great single target potential because he can actually deal more damage to single targets, right? Axe based units and fist based units, they're generally the highest single target like attackers. Axe-based units, probably the most popular one is Warrior right here. I've been seeing this dude a lot, and there's reason for it, because pretty much he increases attack by the number of humanoid characters. So technically you could have like 2 warriors and then a Dark Santa Laharl or a normal Laharl. Everyone can equip axes and everyone can like benefit from this. So this would technically be a perfect like human attacker axe-based single target team, and then you round them out with some supports with like Prism Indigo and New Year's Rosalind, right? So that would be like a perfect team, or you can run Noelle. It really doesn't matter as far as supports goes. Supports are like very versatile. And then you have like sword-based attackers, Dark Knight, very popular one. I'm not sure if Handmaiden is actually in the game yet, but she does similar things to Dark Knight. Dark Knight being a little bit better. And then you have Valvatorez being, you know, the Sword King. Probably my favorite single target unit, you know, just damage wise, survivability wise, like the fact that he recovers his own health. And then you have fist based characters, and I've been seeing like Adele's and Kilia's on the field. They hit so hard, and I'm just like so jealous. And then you have the martial artist man, martial artist women. They act like sort of similarly. They increase fist based like weapons, so technically if you stack like these 4 or 3 of them, they'll be a great like fist type team. And then you have gun based weapons, you know, gunman right here, and then Altima. They both like increase like gun damage. Great party if you want to go down that route. And then you have bow based. Not really too many bow based characters yet, just like the human archer, and then Laharl technically can perform in this section. And then you have INT rod based characters, you know, Professor, she's a great support, but she also has the ability to increase INT plus 12%. And then Mao would go great with this team. Just note that INT would technically be the hardest to build right now. You have to raise the weapon levels. So what do I mean by that? If you can actually raise your weapon levels if you go into Mao's lab, and then you go into, I believe it's like the mana portion, where it's like mana allocation, hard to find. We'll do like a guide on Mao's lab, but let's say you go to Flan, right, and you want to increase a certain weapon mastery, then you would jump into here. And technically I've been increasing like her bow mastery, because that's why it's 100 versus a 60. That way she has the ability to get this. Might as well talk about it since we're here. And I technically can turn any character into whatever weapon type that I want them to. It's just not going to be as easy for them to learn it. So what happened here was weapon skills for the archer or the bow has this doppelganger, one of the best like AoE cheap ones that you can get for humans, and it's only level 9. So what happened was is if I go into scale WM, you can see here that my arrow is 9 out of 9. I believe it was like 6 out of 6 or 3 out of 3 or something like that. And I pretty much raised it. I did the same thing with Etna. I think actually Flan has a baseline of 9, so I take that back. But I did do it with Etna as well, where I made it 9 out of 9, so she can get that doppelganger ability, so they can be great for farming if you choose to go down that route. Any character can wield any weapon. Outside of monsters, you know, they can be both physical or magical. It's just up to their base stats on how they want to perform, and based off of their abilities and the skills that they have at base. So just note that, you know, characters, while they are very flexible, it would be best to run them for the things that they are good at. And then lastly, we have the human-based attacker. I believe this is warrior female, where she pretty much increases spear damage, and of course the Harl can go here. And if you haven't seen it, this is credits to Meow. This is big giant roster showing you characters who are good for like the gate stuff, but they're not really a big deal for team building. You could have like a specific HL like gate team where it's like, oh, I'm gonna run Seraphina, Artina, HL farming, and then I'll run like Roslyn and Flan EXP farming, and then I'll run like Dark Santa, Laharl, Pirate, and Thief for overall like chest drops and stuff, right? It's one of those things where if you want to, you can technically maximize your efficiency between different parties by having them have certain attack types to match each other. If you go into skills learn and then you go to weapon skill, you can see if you go jump into axes, there's a single target attack that is B grade, which is really great. And then of course like some characters have S grade skills like Etna. You can get it if you like combine all of like her Etna dupes that you can get. It's up to you whether you wanted to do it. I just wanted Etna to be more powerful. The unique skills are very valuable, but the weapon skills are just as good, and they can help compensate for characters that could be better. But that is going to be the team guide. The team guide, the lessons learned, is try to match the characters so that they all synergize with each other. Axe-based units, try to stick them with other axe-based units. Sword units, stick them with other sword-based units, so on and so forth. And the same thing applies to monster units. Of course you can mix and match, it doesn't matter if you mix and match, but this is all for the sake of clarity, so you can understand how the whole like team dynamic works between like Disgaea. And of course you'll have different teams for tackling like a human boss or a monster boss, and a lot of like humans are good at killing monsters, and a lot of monsters are good at killing humans. Anyways, that is it for today's video. If you made it this far, consider subscribing, dropping a like, leaving a comment, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter. We are so close to that 17,500 goal. Thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed. Thanks so much for watching. Have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.